Covering this meeting have been sent and posted as required under the Open Public Meetings Act. The executive session started at 5 p.m. and as we always do, the solicitor will comment on the topics that were discussed in executive session.
In executive session, a number of issues were discussed and presented to the mayor and city council by the manager. Among those, certain personnel matters in the Public Works Department. The manager advised that Kevin Turner is now a full-time employee. Manager also advised that there were two promotions, those promotions relating to Bob Bell, is it? Bob Bell and Bob Heller. Labor contract negotiations were discussed. Specifically, the negotiations with the Government Workers Union Local 300 was discussed. Additional information in that matter will be made available to the public this evening when Council considers Resolution 2015-139. The status of the PBA and Fire Department the Fire Union negotiations were discussed, and Council received a report as to status from the manager. The manager anticipates providing additional information in these matters to Council by the middle of July. Information will be made available to the public when these matters are resolved. The manager also presented contract information in terms of a lease agreement with Rutgers. This would touch upon Rutgers installing certain antennas in certain locations in the municipality. Additional information will be made available to the public later this evening when Council considers a resolution in regard to a contract with Rutgers for such lease agreement. Another contract matter dealt with a proposal by the Army Corps to install certain bulkheading. That matter has been discussed and no specific decision was made on that this evening. Additional information will be flowing from the manager. The final matter that was discussed was a litigation matter, which is Cox versus Brigantine. The manager advised that he is consulting with the assigned JIF counsel within the next several days. Additional information in this matter will be made available to the public upon conclusion of that litigation. That was it, sir.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, at this time, we need to approve the requisition list, operating expenses, and payroll. We have a motion and second, please.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have two questions. The reimbursement for the CFO's medical benefits?
That's a COBRA payment.
Oh, okay. And the new furniture?
That's a state contract for the furniture in the CFO's office, yes.
I mean, it was furnished before, no? I mean, why?
There was old furniture. If you noticed in the finance office, several years ago, we had updated all the office furniture in that office, and this was an opportunity for me to do the same in the CFO office.
I'm not sure on the medical payment he just, Joe mentioned. Do we provide health benefits to the CFO, or does she have her own insurance through COBRA? How is this work?
We provided, however, there's a 60-day gap between when they can come on our insurance. So we
I understand.
the COBRA.
Okay, it's for the, just temporary.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one question. For the, I saw it's about 38,000 to Vital Communication. Is that so they can continue to handle appeals for us from the, I guess, reval of the city?
That is correct. So part of their contract includes them defending tax appeals for 3 subsequent years after the reval goes on the books. So this is the reimbursement, or this is a payment per contract for the last year's tax appeals, which were just taken care of.
All right, thank you.
Ed, I had spoken to you about the trash reimbursements. Is that annual? I forgot to ask you that.
That is annual. That's
Okay.
by law, called
Okay.
the Kelly
Right.
law, and it is per the condos because we don't collect trash for the condos.
Right, but I forgot to ask you whether it was annual or semi-annual. Okay, thank you.
If I could, one question to follow up on that, Ed, and this is more for general information, I guess, to our audience. You and I had a discussion about it. The reimbursement that we make to the condo associations for their trash pickup, could you explain briefly how that's calculated?
Yes. The comptroller takes our ACUA bill for collecting trash within the city of Brigantine, divides that total number by the number of sites that we pick up. That calculates to a per unit cost for trash pickup. And then for each of the condo complexes, if it's a 20-unit condo complex, that unit cost is multiplied by the number of units. In that example, it would be 20. And that is the fee determined for reimbursement. What we do also, though, is we have the condos submit their payments, what they actually pay for the trash collection, and whichever is less. If they actually pay less, that's what we reimburse. Or if our calculation is the lower number, that's what we pay.
Now, with that new arrangement with Acura that John is working on, that would be obviated, right? That'll go away.
Yes, John has been talking with the ACUA, and we're about to enter back into negotiations with them. And the goal is to have the ACUA begin trash collection for all these complexes, and therefore we would not have this reimbursement, and the anticipation is it would be a savings. And we'll get back to that because there's some things we would like to add. I think we touched on it when the ACUA did the proposal, the presentation, to purchase containers for either trash or recycling. So, but we'll get back to that. But in terms of, that is the goal, to have the ACUA take over that collection.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, could we have roll call, please?
View,
Yes.
McLeod,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes.
DeLucre,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, at this time, I'll open it up for public comment for agenda items only. If anyone would like to speak on any items that are listed on the agenda, please step forward, use the microphone, state your name and address, and please bear in mind that we have a 5-minute limit. Yes, Mrs. Phillips.
Ann H. Phillips, 308 27th Street. This is on the ratification of the dispatcher's contract. That's Resolution 139. Negotiations are over, and the contract is done. There is no excuse based on a third-party intervention. The public should be able to know what's in the contract before council votes on it. What provisions does it contain which reduce costs, such as those determining an employee's share of the cost of health benefits, any change in the number of steps, salary raises or not, longevity, either use sick and vacation time or lose it, etc. There's no legal reason to keep the public in the dark. You all have copies of this contract. Please speak up. Tell us what we'll be paying for.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Okay? I'd like to hear from
Well,
you.
there will be a discussion when we get to that item, I'm sure, by council members.
Okay.
Okay, yes, Mr. Pucci.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Just two quick items tonight. First is on the agenda is to approve 11 liquor licenses in town. First, let me say that I support the restaurants and the organizations having liquor license. My question is, what education, either that is required from the ABC or actually the city giving out the licenses, what education as far as drunk driving are those organizations providing to the public? I know Chief Reed has been working on some things, a pamphlet along those lines. You have the HERO campaign. Are there any requirements as far as that type of education in order to have that license? We need to look no further than around the corner here and seeing the steps rebuilt because of drunk driver hitting the building. So my question is, is there drunk driving education required in order to obtain that license in the city of Brigantine?
Let me turn it over to Chief Reed. Do you want to talk about the training or the requirements for training within the establishments for their employees?
Yes, a lot of the bars, they have what's called tips and
Tim?
TAMs. John, what they have tips and TAMs certification. They're not required to, but I believe a lot of the establishments do have tips and TAMs certified. Briefly, when we talked before, you gave me some ideas. I have spoken with Lynn. We are going to be having a class coming up pretty soon with ABC. They're going to come out. It'd actually be a good time for us to get somebody here to speak with the bar owners and the club owners and the club establishments, to speak with them, and also education on alcohol.
So that is in progress and is taking place.
Also,
That's
John.
great. That's
under-
great to know.
I know Northfield police officers come to me, and they usually get a grant to come in to the store and make sure everybody's under 21. They put stickers up, and they bring people
Over
through.
21.
I don't know if...
We did. We
gotta-
did get a grant.
There you go. So that's...
Is that the cops and shops?
Cops and shops, they come in and they do a great job there, you know, and I let them come in anytime it's 4th of July or whatever, and they put a bunch of stickers on the beer and alcohol.
And we
Less
also
than
have the
21.
Municipal Alliance, which is a community organization that sets up information, booths and tables about alcohol and drug abuse throughout the city whenever we have events.
I always assumed, John, that if you're serving alcohol or selling alcohol, that there must be some sort of training that you have to go through to know how much alcohol it's going to take to get someone intoxicated. So is that something the ABC provides for the
There's
people in
private-
liquor?
There's private companies that do,
Basically
offer. Yeah, they come out. It's called tips. And
To
they can
train the employees?
train
Yes.
employees. And I
Well-
know a lot of the St. George's, the Cove. I know I was in there 2 weeks ago before they opened, and they were actually having a class. They were actually in there. Laguna does it. They're not required. They do it more for the liability end of it.
Well, isn't in New Jersey, if an establishment serves someone who's obviously intoxicated, they have an accident, and there's a loss of life or property, that the establishment is liable for that?
I'm sure everybody's going to be, if they
Right.
drank at 5 different establishments, they're all going to be liable.
For serving someone who's obviously drunk?
Exactly. And we report when it's called the last drink report.
Mhm.
When somebody gets locked up for drinking and driving, there's a report that the officer does. And they pretty much ask them where they came from, and they fill out a form and send it to the state.
Mhm.
It's called the last drink report. But probably pretty soon, Lynn's going to, we're going to get together and put together a, pretty much for the licensing, what the licensing need to do for the clubs and the local establishment. Actually, be a good time, we can bring in the Municipal Alliance and then try to get some speakers and speak to the owners and the clubs.
The report that we get doesn't say anything about, or there's no slot in there that says how many people who were involved in either a traffic stop or alcohol, the last drink came from which establishment. Would that be worthwhile to make
It's
that?
something in the future
public.
we can add in there if
Mhm. It
council
might-
wants that.
It might be a way of,
Well,
pressuring people to be a little more astute in
one of
carrying
the
out their
issues with that
responsibilities.
is that you're taking the person's word for it.
Mm,
You know,
right.
if someone gets stopped in Northfield or even here in Brigantine, and the officer's taking their word to where they came from,
Right.
so.
Mhm. Mhm. Right. None were disorderly, no.
Usually if a car was stopped in front of, let's say, St. George's, it just stopped.
Mhm.
It had nothing to do with
Right.
the bar, you know, and there was no violation of alcohol.
Mhm.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. And the only other item, Mayor, is if you would, when you get under the managerial discussion, concerning the fire department ISO rating. If in fact that rating has anything to do with our insurance on the homes, how that affects us, that discussion take place at that time.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Which is probably timely because most people have probably seen an increase in their homeowners' insurance. Okay, anyone else want to comment on agenda items? Seeing none, I'm going to move right into the agenda then. We move to ordinance number 12 of 2015. It's a public hearing and adoption of a bond ordinance appropriating $1 million and authorizing the issuance of $950,000 in bonds and notes the city of Brigantine for the design and construction of a streetscape project to be undertaken by the city of Brigantine. Have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, at this time, I will open the meeting for public comment on the streetscape ordinance. Just a reminder that we have a $750,000 grant for this project, and there's a $250,000 appropriation as part of the city debt service budget. Also, we have to appropriate the entire amount and then be reimbursed the $750,000. Mrs. Phillips.
Ann H. Phillips, 308 27th Street. Despite what it says on the website, there are no plans and specifications in the city clerk's office for this project, although the personnel there did try to help find some. This is a lot of money, and some questions need to be asked. I believe the grant application is for $750,000. How and by whom was the amount of $1 million determined? What kind of look, quote unquote, for this area is to be achieved by this project? Will there be a satisfactory return on the investor's investment in the terms of the area of economic growth in that area? Could some improvements be made at a much lower cost? Have the people in the area, residents and business owners, been consulted? Some years ago, a project was considered for that section of town, and the business owners were not supportive of it, and nothing came of it. Now, new sidewalks, driveways with pavers, new lighting, landscaping, outdoor furniture, handicap ramps, bus stop upgrades, etc. are proposed. Much of the money would be spent on unseen costs for paperwork and for professional input. These questions need to be asked and considered before a vote is taken tonight. I think more thought needs to be given to this project. It's nice to have a grant, but this does not obviate the need for a clear purpose as to what is to be achieved and the best way to do it, and a thorough review. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Phillips, I want to clarify some things because apparently you're misinformed. This project is one that we've applied for many years for the grant. The grant has been awarded this year. There is a general scope of this project, which is from 8th Street south to 15th Street, 14th.
Yeah,
Right, right. So with that, I want to just touch on some of the things that you said. There will be a process, and council will be awarding a contract to a engineering design firm to come up with the concept that will be going through a process that will include the owners of the properties, the commercial establishments, and the public's input about whatever look would be achieved there. But in no way do we anticipate that the soft cost on this project will be anywhere near what you've described. In fact, they should be such a small part of the project, and Mr. Stinson can give you exactly what he estimates they will be. The other part of this is the project you're referring to in the past, we never received a grant to do the streetscaping. There was a project that was put together by George McDermott when he was the manager that would allow for low interest funding for shop owners to change their facades.
I'm aware of that.
Right. No, so this is a very different project. This is a streetscaping grant. We didn't have a streetscaping grant back then. There was a private, actually a bank loan that was available at very low interest for some shop owners to change their facades if they wish to do that. I believe, right, well, then what I'm getting at is, it's not that the business owners didn't want us to do a grant to do the streetscaping. They didn't want to invest their own money to do their facades at that particular time. So when you, no, but when you make a statement that they didn't want to take advantage of it, it's not an accurate statement.
I didn't say that, and I did not say that there was a grant before. I simply say that this type of project had come up before.
Right, but it's
and-
not this type of project.
Well, it was
It's
to
a
improve
very- no,
that
it's
district.
a very different project.
Well, perhaps, but the concept is the same.
No, it's not.
Improvement of the district, and the
There is-
business owners were not willing to put up. That's
Then-
correct.
No,
I'm
Miss-
not denying that or
Well-
stating otherwise.
Well, I just want to make sure the public gets accurate information. Now,
Well, what I
in
said was
conjunction
accurate.
with this, there will be a process, a design process that will be instituted once the professional is on board, and there will be input from all the stakeholders in that design process, and then council will make the final decision whether that's the direction they want to go in. But in conjunction with this, what we hope to do, and this is one of the initiatives for the Economic Development, Tourism, and Special Events Committee, is to try and bring some additional resources that may be available through the state of New Jersey, through EDA, and possibly private funding. So if a business owner wanted to upgrade, they wanted to invest in conjunction with this project, they would have the ability to do that. So that's where we stand with it right now. What you're asking council to do is not to authorize the acceptance, basically, of a $750,000 grant to begin the streetscaping process in that area.
Well, I think you need to look at the whole project and know exactly what you're trying to achieve. Also, I believe RFPs have been submitted, and so they will be voted on, or the vendor will be chosen
Yes.
shortly, and then perhaps you'll have something that the public can see. At this point, there isn't anything to see.
There will be, you have to have an authorization to spend money or you cannot begin the process. So I assure you, we'll be able to use the $750,000 grant very effectively in that area.
Well,
Mr. Stinson, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I will try, Mayor. First, I want to address the comment about much money for unseen costs, and that is not the case. We have been awarded a grant for $758,000 to cover the construction cost of a streetscape project. The things that Ms. Phillips mentioned are what was included in our grant application, so pavers, concrete, driveway, street furniture, lighting. They are conceptual terms that we put in our application, which was required in order for NJEDA to review it and accept it and ultimately to approve it. What ultimately will be there will be part of a process once we award a contract for the design services. We received RFPs for design services. I think we had about 8 bidders roughly. I hope to bring a recommendation of award to council at the next council meeting for that consulting service. It's a landscape architect with surveying and engineering partnerships that have bid on this RFP. The numbers range, the low bid was $60,000. The high bid was, I believe, about $150,000. So assuming the low bid or close to the low bid is awarded, that is the soft cost for this project, not counting administrative costs that occur in my office. But so in terms of a statement that much money for unseen costs, I don't agree with that. I think, in fact, the way it's laid out, what you will see for $758,000 is you'll see all of it, because it's going to be concrete. It'll be either pavers or landscaping or street trees. All of that is conceived, but that's what you're going to see. You're not going to see much hidden costs.
Mrs. Phillips, you understand the rules of public comment better than anyone. I don't know if we're going to engage in a debate tonight about what
No.
you said and how it was responded to. I think Mr. Stinson is trying to answer your concerns. I tried to do that as well, but we're not going to engage in a debate back and forth.
Okay, he just talked about soft costs, and I'm just quoting what was in the
I
ordinance.
guess we are, Mrs.
No,
Phillips.
I'm just going to say what was in the ordinance, and what you call soft costs. You know, engineering, planning, permits, construction administration, inspection, design, more specifications. It was quite a list, and I'm sure it is going to take a great deal of the money.
Mr.
I'm
Stinson,
simply
what's your
making that
estimate-
point.
What's your estimate of all of those costs?
The low bid, so it's more than an estimate, it's actual bids. The low bid is about $60,000, 59 and some change. So $60,000, that includes the design, the planning, the permitting, the construction management and inspection of the project. What is contemplated is the design professional will provide 3 conceptual plans that then will be brought to the city, and we'll start working on narrowing or defining what the scope of work will be. There's a construction cost of $758,000 that's covered by the grant, so you're kind of limited in terms of how wide this spectrum will be, because you know you have 5 blocks. You know generally what the available space is for work in those 5 blocks, and you know what the dollar number is. So there's really, in terms of the scope of work, it's fairly defined in that that's the area we have to do, and this is how much money we have, so what are we going to do with it? But it'll be a process. I'm very excited about the process. The consultant that is selected will be required to meet with all the property owners to go through ideas and get ideas from them as well. So we'll back and forth, engage those entities, those property owners, but also to bring to council any public meeting a conceptual design. So council will have input every step of this way. There will be public input, and those property owners will be engaged, and they will be partners in this project, at least in terms of the design and trying to accommodate their concerns and needs. It is, again, it's a project we've applied for probably for 5 times over 15 years through different funding organizations. So this is one, NJEDA, where we are successful, and just very excited about it and looking forward to moving forward, and hopefully that'll happen next meeting.
Thank you. And I just want to correct, I said 8th Street South. It is 9th Street South to 14th Street South.
So
Okay.
Ed, if we don't spend all the money allocated or planned for the soft costs, that money will not be used.
Are you talking about the $1 million?
Yes.
Before? So that is correct, absolutely. If you don't spend it, the bond can be canceled, or whatever's unspent will be canceled or reappropriated at council's desire. Remember, this is a reimbursement grant. So we need to do an ordinance that authorizes the work, that provides the funding for the work so that we can get it done and then get reimbursed. We had to do an ordinance for $758,000 if we wanted to get this grant. We had to do an ordinance actually for greater than that if we want to get a design done so that we can go out to bid and construct this project. So we needed to do a bonding ordinance that has the authorization. We came up with $1 million because that's, quite frankly, we were unclear on what the design consultant cost would be. And also we're uncertain on the final number of the construction project, right? So this gives us the flexibility, but council will have the opportunity every step of this way. You'll see the design before it goes out to bid. You will see the bid once it's received and have the opportunity to award that. So you're going to see how this money gets spent, how this bond money gets spent. I came up with the $1 million in consult with Jim Rotella, our grant consultant, and Joel Fleischman, our bond counsel, and we felt that this was the appropriate number, and I do recommend that council approve it.
Any other public comment on this ordinance? Yes, John?